Remember the run-up to Inauguration Day in the United States when Donald Trump's envoy twisted arms to push a Gaza ceasefire over the line? Well, how did it so quickly graduate to this?
To buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza.
Donald Trump not only doubling down on his plan to forcibly deport the entire Palestinian population of Gaza, but also telling visitors like the King of Jordan to take them in. We'll ask about the plan, the pushback to the plan, and whether that ultimatum to Hamas to free all its hostages by Saturday noontime signals a return to all-out war. Israeli troops are certainly preparing. More broadly, how much does Trump want to own this conflict? This is a U.S. president known for campaigning against forever wars. Already, it seemed like Assad's fall in Syria might signify a once-in-a-generation reshaping of the region's balance of power. Now, what to make of this Trump factor? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking if Arab allies push back against his plan. With us from London, she's a former Pentagon Middle East advisor, political analyst Yasmine El-Gamal. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Rina Bassist is international correspondent for the Israel Public Broadcasting Corporation. Good to see you.
Good evening.
From Washington, Saudi author and political commentator Ali Shihabi. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And later we'll be joined from Doha by Jordanian academic Hassan Barari. You can, by the way, listen, that's right, listen and like and subscribe to the France 24 debate wherever podcasts are streamed. So, Egypt's president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, clearly in no mood to get ambushed like the King of Jordan seemed to be on Tuesday, with that public pressuring by Donald Trump to take in Palestinians. Cairo stating that Sisi will steer well clear of the White House if Gaza displacement is on the agenda. Emerald Maxwell has more.
For Egypt, Donald Trump's plan to displace Palestinians from Gaza is a non-starter. And in a sign of its anger, Egyptian security sources said President Sisi would not go to Washington for talks if the agenda included Trump's vision. In Cairo, the mood is one of defiance.
He wants to displace the Palestinians from their homes and ignite war in the region. This man has come to destroy the region.
The entire Arab world must come together as one, and we must not allow anyone to strong-arm us.
The US president, though, has doubled down on his suggestion for the permanent displacement of Gazans to both Egypt and Jordan.
I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
Last year, the US allocated $1.3 billion in military aid to Egypt, which, alongside Israel, has consistently been one of the biggest recipients of US military aid since a US-brokered peace treaty between Egypt and Israel more than 4 decades ago. That treaty, a bedrock of the Middle East peace process, now looks increasingly fragile. President Sisi has repeatedly said Egypt would never facilitate the expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza, aside from being an injustice to the Palestinians and an economic burden for Egypt, which narrowly averted a full-blown crisis last year. Sisi views Islamist groups like Hamas as a serious threat to his country's own security. The Egyptian foreign minister travelled to Washington on Sunday, where Reuters reports it was made apparent in a meeting with the US Secretary of State that the displacement plan would be on the table if Sisi visited. Egypt wants its own plan for the reconstruction of Gaza to be the basis for discussions, which it says would ensure Palestinians remain on their land. It will host an emergency Arab summit on February 27th to discuss, quote, serious developments for Palestinians.
Yasmine El-Gamal, before we talk about Egypt's plan, you heard that clip of Donald Trump saying we give them billions and billions. How much leverage does Cairo have?
It is true that both Cairo and Jordan get assistance from the United States, but it's also equally important to remember that there's a lot that Egypt and Jordan offer for the stability of the region, for the stability and security of the United States as well. And that fact seems to be getting lost on a lot of people. A lot of the commentary that I'm seeing on social media and elsewhere is focusing on the leverage that the US has over Egypt and Jordan, but not the other way around. It's important to remember that Egypt and Jordan are two countries that have the longest peace treaties with Israel, that the bedrock really of stability across the region depends largely on those peace deals, and that the US and that Egypt and Jordan both do their part to do things, everything from countering terrorism to really being an integral part of the regional security architecture that keeps the region safe and, by extension, the region's allies. And that's not a fact to be discounted. So I think that what you'll see, and we saw this yesterday with the meeting between King Abdullah of Jordan and Donald Trump, where there was this acknowledgement that the US and the Arab countries in the region have to work together to come up with a plan that first and foremost does not include the removal of Palestinians from their homes, and also that includes the interests of the countries of the region and that of the United States as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that meeting, because it was kind of awkward for the King of Jordan. Abdallah, who, by the way, doesn't usually field questions from reporters during photo ops, looked clearly uncomfortable as his host on Tuesday gushed about how Jordan and Egypt would take in the citizens of Gaza. Perhaps we can show the visuals of that moment where the king of Jordan is sitting there while Donald Trump is speaking. It was a bit awkward at that point, and then the king waited until he'd left the White House before taking to Twitter in both English and Arabic. Here's what he had to. There we see those images of the king, that's been making the rounds on social media. Close-ups of Abdallah during the meeting on Twitter, or now X, excuse me. The King of Jordan saying, "I reiterate my country's steadfast position against the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. This is the unified Arab position. Rebuilding Gaza without displacing the Palestinians and addressing the dire humanitarian situation should be the priority for all." Rina Bassist, our colleagues from the Arab language desk here at France 24, telling us it's highly unusual to have the king forced to answer reporters' questions at one of these photo ops. And there is this sense that he may have been a bit ambushed by that meeting in the Oval Office, hence Cairo saying President Sisi is not going anytime soon to talk about that.
Yes, no, of course it was a very awkward moment for him, even though I think he expected this to be on the table, because everybody's been talking about the statements of Trump since he made them. But I'm not sure it's so much a question of leverage, and that also may explain the awkwardness. I don't think that neither Jordan nor Egypt have really leverages to pressure back or to push back against this plan of President Trump. It's more that both countries, they don't have any other option but to resist it. Why? First, internally, because it's obvious that an immigration of 2 million of people, it will put in danger both the regime of President Sisi and the King of Jordan. It's a real threat to the stability of his regime. Economically also, we know Egypt is in a very bad economic situation. Jordan has its own problems. Don't forget that the Jordanians have also received in the last 10 years more than 1 million refugees from Syria. So they have already an enormous burden of immigrants, of refugees in their own little country. So it's unimaginable for them to take in another 2 million Palestinians. That's internally for both countries. And then externally, there is the issue of Palestinian statehood. Neither of these countries, nor any Arab country, I think, in the world, would take it upon itself to break down any aspiration of the Palestinian people to have a state, because this is what Mr. Trump is asking. He's saying that if ever there will be a Palestinian state, it will be only in the West Bank. That's the translation of this proposal. So I don't think any of these, neither King Abdallah nor President Assisi, can come to Washington and say, yes, we accept such a proposal.
So, Ali Shihabi, at this point in time, Egypt, Jordan, it's impossible for them, you just heard Rina say, to take in the Palestinians. What do they do? How do they handle Donald Trump? Do they play for time?
Well, look, the danger behind what Donald Trump has said, I mean, ultimately, this is a half-baked idea. So Donald Trump has no way of displacing the Palestinians. He's not going to land U.S. troops in Gaza to push the Palestinians out. The danger is that this gives the Israelis ideas. The Israelis have always dreamt of population transfer. And under the conditions of war, which could be reignited at any moment, this could encourage the Israelis to push the Palestinians into Gaza. So in a way, he has normalized a little bit the concept of transfer, which was always on sort of on the extreme end of the spectrum. He has brought it and given it, prominence and possibility, and that's the danger.
And again, what do you do if you're Egypt or Jordan?
No, I think they'll do nothing. They'll just say, we cannot support it, and they're looking to be able to bring other Arab countries with them so that there will be a joint Arab position, not one where they will stand up alone to Mr. Trump. But they will have a summit meeting. There's a meeting in Riyadh, and then there will be another meeting in Cairo. And there will be a joint statement by all of them, by all the Arab countries concerned, that they do not support this.
So on the one hand, Jasmine El-Gamal, there is the plan to develop, as Donald Trump puts it, the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, there is this ultimatum that Trump himself has put up that not some, but as is stipulated by the current ceasefire agreement, but all the hostages must be handed over by Saturday at noontime. And on that point, the Israeli Prime Minister picking up the ball and running with it. Let's take a listen.
If Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday at noon, the ceasefire will end and the Israeli Defense Forces will return to intense fighting until Hamas is finally defeated.
Jasmine El-Gamal, how did we go from the Donald Trump who twisted Netanyahu's arm to sign on to a ceasefire to the one who, as you heard Ali Shihabi says, has legitimized what the hardliners want inside the Israeli cabinet?
Right, that's an excellent question. I mean, this is what has everybody's head spinning, is that in the last week, since Donald Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu about a week ago, we've gone from a presidency, a Trump presidency that came in strong on the pressure, got the two parties to sign a deal that the Biden administration was either unable or unwilling to do in terms of exerting that pressure, and saying that they were going to monitor and maintain the monitoring of the deal. Steve Witkoff went to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Gaza, the first visit to Gaza of a U.S. official in 15 years, to show how serious they were about making sure the ceasefire goes according to plan. That's where we were up until a week ago. Now, all of a sudden, you have these ideas that about the Palestinians and where they're going to go and how or when, which eventually will not amount to anything, because as all three of us have reiterated, it's simply not possible. So we've gone to those ideas. We've also gone to the removal of any sort of pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu to maintain his end of the ceasefire agreement. Now, what Donald Trump said about all hostages being released on Saturday, which is being repeated by Prime Minister Netanyahu, that's not part of the deal that the two parties signed.
So why is he doing it?
Deal. Well, I don't think any of us, anyone who tells you why Donald Trump is doing anything is just guessing. And I'd rather not speculate. I'd rather talk about what the actual facts are that we're seeing right now. This is not part of the deal. It was never part of the deal. We do know that the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, by all accounts, including from former Israeli officials, from Israeli negotiators, from Arab negotiators, he has been looking for a reason to get out of this deal. His finance minister, Smotrich, said that Netanyahu gave him concessions before signing the first phase of the deal that promised him that it would never get to phase two. Here, all of a sudden, comes President Trump saying, well, now all hostages have to be released or else the deal is in trouble. And we see Netanyahu picking up on that very quickly because actually he probably was never going to get to that phase two of the negotiations in the first place. So what is incumbent upon the Arab states right now to do, and to the extent possible, the Trump administration, but I don't have any hopes for that at the moment, is to continue that pressure on the Americans, to continue that pressure on Hamas, to continue stating that the only way that there is a peaceful solution forward in Gaza is not moving people out of Gaza. It's getting supplies into Gaza, getting mobile homes into Gaza, which is part of the deal, which has not been happening, which is getting to the end of the ceasefire, releasing the hostages, and then allowing the Palestinian Authority to go into Gaza and start that process of reconstruction, have the Israelis withdraw, basically do the deal. And that's not what we see happening now, and that's extremely worrying.
Okay, so you heard there, Rina Bassist, Jasmine Al-Gamal refusing to go into Donald Trump's head, which I understand. The facts on the ground this Wednesday are that there are aid trucks going in, and for now, the ceasefire is teetering, it's tenuous, but it's still holding as we speak.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go into Mr. Trump's head. We heard the Secretary of State Marco Rubio explaining the decision or the statement of Mr. Trump. He was saying very simply, the president is tired of it. He's tired of seeing every week 2, 3, 4 people being released. He wants them all released together at one point. Now, it's true that what was said by my predecessor, that this was not part of the deal. And let us not forget that it was Mr. Trump who brought Hamas and Netanyahu to the point of agreeing about this deal. What I think is, and again, I'm trying not to guess, but I think that very simply, Mr. Trump showed us all that by forcing the sides, he could get a deal. And since it worked, why not take it any further? So for Mr. Trump, he pressured everybody into a deal. Now he thinks the deal is not that great. He might get a better deal if he pressures everybody a bit more. So he's trying. He's playing poker, if you want, trying to see if more pressure will get a better deal. There is also the other component, which is the declaration or the announcement, the decision made by Hamas, suspending the deal after the first declaration of Trump about his idea of the transfer of Gaza residents. Hamas said that they are not going to release 3 hostages this Saturday. And if you, we heard the reaction of Mr. Netanyahu earlier in your translation, because he made it in Hebrew, and the translation into English, he was talking about our hostages. He was not saying the same way as Mr. Trump said, all of the hostages. What does it mean? Maybe he leaves a little bit of room if Hamas comes back and say, okay, with all this pressure around us, we'll go with the deal as it was planned, we'll release 3 hostages. Here, Mr. Netanyahu leaves a little bit of room to accept that instead of accepting this new ultimatum of Mr. Trump of having everybody released on Saturday.
All right, Hassan Bourari, as promised, joins us, Jordanian academic, professor of international relations at Qatar University. Thank you for being with us from Doha and joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Thanks for having me.
At this point in time, again, be it with the Gaza plan put forth by Trump, be it with this Saturday ultimatum sent to Hamas, Is it all bluster or is it all unraveling?
Well, I think, what I want to say is that the first stage of the ceasefire is moving smoothly. There are a lot of speed bumps in the road, and but until this moment, we've seen a commitment on both sides of the divide, the Israelis and the Palestinians. There's something missing here, which is the humanitarian protocols not being implemented, thanks to the Israeli objections and obstructions. But all in all, we've seen prisoner swap, and that is very encouraging. And now we're going to see another one, maybe on Saturday. And then President Trump came up with an out of the blue proposal saying that even ultimatum that he have to hand over all the prisoners on Saturday or else. I don't know what or else means for nothing. Trump, he's talking about hell. We know that the war is the hell. So if this is what he means, probably he would encourage the Israelis to move against the Palestinians. But this will risk and jeopardize the lives of the remaining hostages here. We're talking about maybe above 6 to 8 hostages in Gaza. So we really don't know whether Trump is serious about what he said or just a gamble. Sometimes he's known for saying things and then 2 days later he would change his position. So we have to wait and see. But there's one thing that if he jeopardize or derail the first stage, then there will be no more of a second stage. And here the most important thing from the Israeli perspective, that is the returning of all hostages. And we know that there are a lot of pressures on Netanyahu. And here I'm talking about domestic pressure. The families of the hostages are actually days in, days out in the street asking or putting pressure on Netanyahu to finish the deal. And this will cause him a lot of problems. So that's why Hamas, I think they understand very well the internal dynamics in Israel, and they are hanging on their own position that, if you don't move smoothly in the first stage, they might even not finish that.
Rina Bassis, just very briefly on this. Who's got more leverage right now? Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners or those hostage families?
I think he's pushed from both sides, but definitely the release of the 3 hostages last Saturday, the condition that they were coming out of Gaza extremely thin. You could see that they were tortured, that they were starved. I think that was a turning point for the Israeli public. I think many in Israel, even those on the right who might have accepted the situation as it is, calling to finish, to eliminate Hamas as a priority, seeing these 3 people coming out the way they did, understand that we cannot wait anymore, and the lives of all the other hostages are in extreme danger. Every hour counts.
And yet we have this call-up of reservists, Israel preparing for return to war on Saturday.
Yes, I think Israel is taking very seriously the decision of Hamas to suspend the release of hostages. Of course, we still have a few days until Saturday, but Israel is preparing in case Hamas is not going to go back on that. And if Hamas is not going to go back on that decision, then it means that the agreement for the release of the hostages for the ceasefire is broken.
Lots of reactions on the hashtag F24 debate. He's probably anchoring, says Zalbux on X, formerly Twitter. Anchoring is a psychological tactic where the first offer sets the tone for negotiations. The initial number becomes an anchor influencing the rest of the discussion. Again, it's this idea of, is this just the art of the deal guy talking, Ali Shihabi? Do you take Rina's point that this could be Trump kind of discovering this on the fly, seeing he got results the first time around and think I'll press for an even better deal?
Well, look, it's clearly not well thought through. And as we understand from people around the White House, this did not go through an interagency process. It wasn't debated internally. It wasn't researched. I don't think the key people around Trump themselves were aware of it and aware of how strongly he felt towards this. So at this stage, it's very difficult to see what his strategy is, because, I mean, if he throws this into the ring and it goes nowhere, how will he react? He may come up with another idea. He may get upset and pout. Nobody knows, really. But it's certainly going to get no traction from the Arab countries whatsoever.
Well, Ali, let me ask you this question, because in his first presidency, it was standard, you know, Trump would say the Mexicans will pay for it, for the wall, and time would pass and it wouldn't happen. And so people would kind of play the clock when they dealt with Donald Trump. But we saw with this, he makes that Gaza plan public in the presence of Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House tries to dial it back, and then he comes back saying, no, he insists upon it. Has he changed? Is he more on message this time? Should we take him seriously?
Well, it is certainly an idea that somebody has given him and that he has adopted, and adopted strongly. It's an idea that will fail. The question is, though, can anybody take advantage of that, i.e. the Israelis? And that is the danger, because if Israel takes the excuse of Hamas stopping the hostage release, because Hamas is stopping it because they say the Israelis have not met all the terms of the agreement, like allowing mobile homes into Gaza, for example. So if Israel takes advantage of that and starts a war and starts a process of pushing people towards the Egyptian border, then, you know, we will be in a totally different situation, and we'll have to see how Trump will react to that.
And how Arab states will react to that. Again, on Tuesday, King Abdullah played for time at the White House, what with an Arab League summit at the end of the month that's to be preceded by a 7-nation summit next week in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. They'll try to formulate a common position for Washington.
The president is looking at Egypt coming to present their plan. As I said, we will be in Saudi Arabia to discuss how we can work with the president and with the United States. So I think let's wait until the Egyptians can come and present it to the president and not get ahead of ourselves.
Jasmine El-Gamal, when the King of Jordan there talks about the Egyptians formulating the position, what does he mean exactly?
Well, the Egyptians have already come out and said that they're going to be presenting a plan, that they have ideas, they have ideas for a 3 to 5 year window of reconstruction in Gaza without moving people out, and that they're going to be working together with the other Arab states and the international community to get funding and support for that reconstruction phase. Egypt, of course, as you know, it's one of the guarantors of the ceasefire agreement. It's traditionally had relations and the ability to talk to Hamas. And so that is likely one of the reasons that it's playing such a lead role right now. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a very coordinated Arab stance. Now, I just want to mention a couple of things, Francois. First of all, we have to remember, because I don't think this is brought up nearly enough in conversations that I see also even online, not just in the news, is that when people ask about the Arab plan for peace, there is an Arab plan for peace. There has been an Arab plan for peace with Israel on the table since 2002, and it's called the Arab Peace Initiative, that offers full recognition. This is Arab and Muslim countries, the OIC, Organization of Islamic States, the Organization of Islamic Conference.
Which will also be having a summit, by the way, afterwards.
That's right. But all of these countries, Islamic countries and Arab countries, since 2002, and it has been updated when it was adopted by the full Arab League, they have said that we will, Israel will be included in the region. We will guarantee its security. It will be included as a full member state in the region, provided that a Palestinian state that is also safe and secure stands side by side with that Israeli state. So there is an Arab plan. The Israelis haven't taken it so far. The other issue is that plan, it's not just on the Israelis. That plan has to include a way for Hamas to lay down its arms so that something like October 7th doesn't happen again. I say that because the trust is extremely low on both sides. And if you can't provide those guarantees on both sides, Israel has to guarantee a Palestinian state. Hamas has to guarantee that it will not try to do this again. That's the way that you get to peace. This is, that's just what has to happen. So likely, what is going to be discussed in these meetings, both in Saudi Arabia and in Cairo, is how to really get down to the details and provide a pathway, not a plan. Like I said, the plan exists, but a pathway to implementing that plan. I also just want to say quickly that I saw just coming in now, Israeli reporter Barak Ravid is saying that a senior Israeli official has told him that the Israelis provided a notice today that if Hamas releases the 3 hostages on Saturday, that Israel will also continue to implement its part of the agreement. They've sent this message to Hamas via Qatar and Egypt. This just came in a few minutes ago.
Let me ask you, let's ask the Jordanian in the room a second here. Hassan Barari, you were missed at the beginning of our conversation because we were looking again, when you heard that clip of the King of Jordan, and did you get the sense that he really was ambushed by this, having to, first of all, he doesn't often answer questions to reporters, but what happened in the Oval Office on Tuesday?
I think what I heard from the Jordanian that the press conference was not really planned, and then the king was surprised by that. But the king said what he wanted to say. He didn't agree with Trump. He didn't give one concession when it comes to the core interests of Jordan. As one of them is forced migration or the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from Gaza into Jordan. And the king's answer was that there is an Arab plan being discussed, going to be discussed in a week's time in Saudi Arabia. And he said that we're trying to see how this is going to be good for everyone.
And how much force does that plan have when, as was said earlier in the conversation, Donald Trump's remarks are enabling hardliners in Israel to do the opposite?
It does. They're taking advantage of that. They're saying that Trump is supporting them, and then there's an opportunity, a golden one, to implement the Greater Israel vision. But this is a problem here. How are you gonna do this when you have almost 50% of those who exist between the river of Jordan and the Mediterranean are Palestinians? What are you gonna do about that? What are you gonna do about the population? Are you gonna give them citizenship? Are you gonna have a binational state that is ruled by a minority? And here I'm talking about the Jewish minority over the majority of the Palestinians. And if you want to keep a Jewish democratic state, are you going to kick out the Palestinians? So there is a challenge here. The right wing in Israel is not really answering this question. So what are you going to do when you hold on to the whole land? What about the population? And that's why the left in Israel, which no longer exists, by the way, and this is even the irony, they thought about disengagement, that give them whatever you can give them, and then they can call it a state, an empire, a county, whatever. But because if you want to keep and maintain a Jewish character of Israel, you have to disengage and give them part of the land. So this is the partition plan. But people are really driven by this messianic vision of having their cake and eat it too, having the whole land and having peace at the same time with Arab. And even Netanyahu is talking about his pride, which is normalization with Saudi Arabia. This is crazy, in the Arab debate. It's either this or that. So if you want to have peace with everyone, you have to give the Palestinians the right to self-determination. And here I'm talking about state. But if you want to use force in order to migrate the Palestinians, expel them, this will open the Pandora box, and nobody would know, because anarchy would reign in this part of the world, and it would be really costly for the Americans, for the Israelis, and for everyone in this part of the world.
Rina Bassista, Israeli Prime Minister, came back from Washington saying, you've been asking me what's my day after plan. Well, Donald Trump just gave it. This is it. That's what he said. But again, do we take at face value what Benjamin Netanyahu said?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, coming back from a meeting with Trump, what can he say? He's not going to contradict the American president, and especially not one he was supporting even during this presidential campaign, not to speak about the prior presidential campaign. He was always on Trump, on the side of Trump. But I think whatever was said here, we have to be very careful, because we are talking about two separate things. Of course, there is the aspirations, and many of us in Israel hope for the two-state solution. But this is not on the table now. After October 7, it will take a very long time until the Israeli public will be able to think about it, to look for peace. So at the moment, what's on the table is not peace. What's on the table now is a plan for Gaza. We have to find a solution for Gaza, to reconstruct Gaza, to help the people suffering in Gaza. It's two separate things for the moment, whether we like it or not. And here we have to admit the fact that 16 months after October 7 and 3 months after the elections in the United States, the Arab countries did not come up with a concrete plan how to deal with Gaza, how to reconstruct Gaza. It's only now that we hear about this very provocative idea of Mr. Trump, very dangerous, if I may say so, also idea of Mr. Trump, that Egypt is saying, oh, but we have a sort of a plan and let's discuss it and let's have a summit. So I think the Arab countries also have to take their share of responsibility for multiple reasons, either internal politics, external politics. They refused so far to enter into this very hazardous field, if I may say so. And only that we have these threats of Trump, they are saying, oh, but we do have a plan and let's talk about it.
Ali Shihabi, that plan, it's to be discussed again in Riyadh next week, February the 21st. How far along is the plan?
Well, actually, there is a more updated plan. And the more updated plan, which has been discussed by foreign ministers with the Americans and with American envoys, is that the PA would be brought into Gaza to take over from Hamas, and that there would be a multinational force, that some Arab countries will participate in that multinational force, and rebuilding will take place under international supervision. So there is a plan on the table for Gaza post-war, but the Israelis are ignoring it because they don't want to bring the Palestinian Authority. Netanyahu, on purpose, has been keeping Gaza and the West Bank separate so he can divide Palestinian leadership, really, and claim that there is no peace partner on the other side. But there is a peace partner, which is the Palestinian Authority, and it has the full support of the Arab states. So
what do we know about Egypt's plan at this point?
Well, Egypt, they just came out today and said that they had that 3 to 5 year plan to rebuild it. But I think that it also follows on what has been discussed previously, which is to have the PA take over control and to unify the West Bank and Gaza, which is something Netanyahu doesn't want to do. So this is where the Israelis have been dancing around this issue and waiting for facts on the ground to change. And the fear is, again, that they will use, this latest development to create new facts on the ground.
The previous times when there have been wars between Israel and Hamas, the ones who financed the reconstruction were the Gulf states. How do they feel about that?
Well, this time they have said they will not refinance anything unless there's a political solution, because they are tired of financing things and having the Israelis come and destroy them. So the whole idea is, and this was being discussed with the Biden administration, was that to empower the PA, to reform the PA, and to have them come and take over Gaza also, but with international help.
Jasmine El-Gamal, is that naive to think that this is possible for the Palestinian Authority to return to the Gaza Strip?
No, not at all. I mean, I was kind of surprised when I just heard a few moments ago that the Arabs don't have a plan. They've never had a plan. As Ali just said, there is a plan. There has been a plan. We are dealing and it's so important to underscore who we're dealing with on the Israeli side here. We have a prime minister who has openly bragged about how he is the only person who can prevent the emergence of a Palestinian state. We have a prime minister in Israel that says that he will not only not allow Hamas to rule Gaza, which is absolutely right, but also he won't allow the PA to go into Gaza. And then people say, well, there's no plan on the Arab side. Every time the Arabs try to put together a plan or put forth a plan or even put money towards reconstruction, it keeps getting rejected by Prime Minister Netanyahu and his right-wing extremist government that even is the majority of the Israeli public now. We have seen protests for over a year now, calling on him to end this war, to get the hostages back, saying enough is enough. Israelis that I have been working with over the last year alongside Palestinian peace builders, Israelis and Palestinians together, who are coming to places like London, where I live, and saying to people here, if you think that you are being a friend of Israel by supporting this prime minister, you are sorely mistaken, because he is not a friend of Israel. So we have to remember that Prime Minister Netanyahu is, just as Hamas is, an enormous obstacle to peace, and that peace cannot happen without thinking of how both Gaza and the West Bank can move forward and be a place where Palestinians can live dignified lives. These are not two separate entities or two separate countries to be dealt with separately. There is extreme trauma on the Israeli side, and completely understandably, there is also extreme trauma on the Palestinian side, but it's up to the leadership of those countries to move those societies forward, because at the end of the day, the absence of peace will only lead to more and more trauma in the future, and nobody wants that.
All right, in a parallel universe, by the way, Israel's prime minister this Wednesday taking the stand again in his ongoing corruption trial. Benjamin Netanyahu, who at times has defied the prosecutors and the judges on this. It seems as though, Rina Bassist, we live in an age where those who have executive power defy courts a lot. Has the current mood in Washington mean that Netanyahu, will there be a Trump effect on Israeli domestic politics where he can defy those judges?
I don't think it's the Trump effect. In Israel, we call Mr. Netanyahu the phoenix. He always survives. He's an exceptional politician, whether you like him or not. He knows how to maneuver things. He knows how to maneuver his political alliances, and he knows how to deal with the court. And we've seen that today he has this strategy of trying to delay again and again and again. We've seen people coming in with little notes giving him, and he was saying to the judges, oh, I have an urgent security matter that I have to attend. You'll have to excuse me for a few minutes. Then he's asking to delay his next appointment at court. So he's playing on that, and of course, no judge in the world would say, oh, Mr. Netanyahu, you are asking for a few hours because you have to deal with the crisis of the hostages. We refuse your request for a delay. No judge in Israel, no judge in the world would say that, and it seems that he's using it.
It's Wednesday. This deadline is Saturday. A lot can happen between now and then. What will be the key?
Oh, I think the key lies in two places. First of all, in the hands of Hamas. Hamas has to say, yes, okay, things have changed. We say that we are suspending the agreement. Maybe we can find some sort of terrain d'entente. Maybe Israel will agree to release a few more Palestinian prisoners or make another gesture, so we will get the 3 hostages back. And then there is also the Netanyahu government. How much do they really want it to happen on Saturday? You have mentioned before, Israel is preparing, the Tzal is preparing, the Israeli army is already deployed outside the Gaza Strip and inside. Do they really want it to happen now? It's a big question.
Big question indeed. Well, unfortunately, I have to leave it there. I want to thank you, Rina Bassist, for being with us. I want to thank Jasmine Al-Gamal for being with us from London, Ali Shihabi in Washington, Hassan Barari in Doha. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.